I'm the boy in your other phone, lighting up inside your drawer at home, all alone.
Hello everyone, welcome back to My Pop 5. Today is a really special day for us because we are doing something quite a bit different here today. I'm here with Daniel as always. Say hello, Daniel.
Hello, everyone.
Today, Daniel and I kind of wanted to get together to really kind of step away from the normal hustle and bustle that we normally do in terms of having a guest and really spend some time talking to you guys. We've had 11 full episodes drop with incredible guests, and we're so incredibly thankful for the ability to speak with these creatives and these artists about all the things that have inspired them, and they've given us such amazing content recommendations for the things that have inspired them, and it's been such a joy thus far. But I felt it was super important to then kind of open it up, connect with you all, say thank you so much for all the incredible support thus far. Also, just get a chance for you guys to ask some questions, and we're going to spend about half an hour here answering some of those questions and talking through some pop culture opinions based on those questions. So, Daniel, do you have anything you want to say?
Thank you, everyone. It's always great to get some kind of feedback on what it is that we do. I mean, we really love making the show, and me and Ryan have always geeked out about pop culture. One thing that I really love is getting cool recommendations for things that I've never experienced pop culture wise. I've been put on to a lot of really cool things.
Yeah, we want to continue doing a little bit more to connect with you all, answer some more of your questions. I'm so sorry that we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but a lot of them are asking about our opinions in pop culture. And never did I once think that my opinion would necessarily be valuable towards any of this stuff, but the fact that people want to hear what I think about some of the new music that's out there is insanely cool. The core of this show is always going to be the guests that we bring on. I love talking to artists and creatives about all the things that they love and geeking out about this stuff. So that won't go away, and we're going to continue to have guests. But we definitely wanted to make sure that we had some time to, one, connect with you, two, ask for some feedback as well. Find out what are the things that you're liking, what are the things that we could potentially be doing more of. Maybe it is things like this. And also just hear from you, maybe to also figure out who you'd like for us to bring on. What are some guests that you'd love for us to have that you think might be attainable, so we can reach out to those folks and see if there's a chance that they'd like to jump on the show. We're going to go ahead and jump into it. We received quite a few questions, and the first one actually is coming from a really good friend of mine named Eva. I'll give some background on Eva. She actually, I met her through the internet. For people who have been following the show since day one, you may know that the show was delayed due to some Apple Podcast issues, and I had posted a video early on explaining my struggles with Apple as we were trying to get ready for the launch date. And Eva actually came across this video randomly and reached out because she was having a similar struggle launching her podcast. And so she reached out and we connected, and I'm super thankful for her friendship. And I had a chance to meet with her when she was here in LA, and we talked about all things podcasting, and it's been such a joy to have her. But her question for us was, can you share how you all came together to create a podcast, meaning the My Pop 5 crew? And I would love to kind of answer that question. So for me, I will say that I've had this idea for a podcast for a really long time. Podcasts for me specifically really had a big change in my life. I've alluded to it, I think, on past episodes, specifically our high school episode that we did. I wasn't really happy with who I was in high school. I feel like I was a jerk to people and was kind of full of myself in some ways. And due to a lot of changes and failed relationships and things like that, I had a lot of self-reflection in my later college days. And podcasts were kind of a big reason for that. Ever since I kind of heard my first podcasts, which were This American Life and The Sorts, it kind of allowed me to really see different perspectives and really change the way I viewed things. And so I'm really appreciative for podcasts for that reason. And then I was hooked. I started listening to podcasts all the time and really being engaged and loving hearing other people's stories and engaging with this medium. And it led for me to want to kind of do something on my own a few years back. And the initial idea for the show for me was going to be called something along the lines of My Favorite Things. I wanted it to be one thing where someone would bring in their favorite movie or their favorite album. And when I was sitting there talking to Daniel about it, Daniel had just moved to LA, and he and I were kind of just sitting outside on the curb talking about all these things. And I pitched the idea of the podcast to him. And I had asked him if he'd want to kind of pursue some sort of project with me. And we didn't have a fully fleshed out idea. And right before we left, when we were sitting on that curbside, Daniel had mentioned, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I've always loved pop culture. And when he said the word pop culture, my mind just started racing. And I don't remember where the conversation went from there, but we left, and on the drive home, pop culture was in my head, and I just started brainstorming names around pop culture. And the original idea that came up, Daniel, was, I don't know if you remember this, was my Pop 10. And knowing how long our show's now, if we ran with my Pop 10, these episodes would probably be 3 hours long. But then we came in, and the next day I had the idea of my Pop 5, and it kind of went from there. What do you remember about kind of the start of this?
Yeah, first moving to LA, and Ryan had been a friend of mine for a few years at that point. I never really thought about being on my own podcast. I had enjoyed podcasts, and it wasn't really until Ryan had brought it up that he was also into podcasts and wanting to, do something creative, have our own show. It was actually something that I don't think I ever would have pursued on my own, or really even been interested in until you kind of came up with that idea, Ryan. Just remember just wanting to really get my hands on any kind of recording project I could.
Yeah, I think it was totally the biggest thing for me is that this is absolutely the conversations I was kind of already having, with my friends and things like that. I think back to Devin, who, was on the show, and our friendship kind of blossomed in a similar experience where we kind of just sitting there and in the cabin while we were recording the Pool Toys EP, geeking out about different things and talking about this type of stuff. So they were conversations I was already having and loved having them, and even similar things with you and I, kind of talking about Andre 3000 or whatever and Outkast at certain points. Like, it just totally made sense. And so, yeah, to answer Eva's question, ultimately it was something that I don't think this would exist without Daniel. I know he's kind of giving it a lot to me, saying it was my idea. And while it was, I do think that I was stuck. And if it wasn't for those conversations and not going through this alone, I don't think I would have gotten as far as I have in terms of making this launch. And the biggest thing for me is I love doing projects with my friends and people that I love. And so I don't think there's any chance I'd ever do this on my own, and so I'm super thankful for Daniel and those conversations and the girls, Veronica, Brianna, for being a part of this, because I wouldn't want to do it any other way. And while they're not here today, I will kind of give a brief background in terms of how they got involved with the show, but next time they're on, I'll kind of have them answer this for you, Eva. But Brianna, I met, she is a great graphic designer, but also when I first met her, she and I also would just talk about, at the time, it was kind of at the peak of the pandemic, we were talking about the new Phoebe Bridgers records or the Taylor Swift's folklore that came out, or Ted Lasso, and all these different things that were kind of happening. And I just loved talking with her about this stuff too, and knew she was great at graphics, and it seemed like a no-brainer for her to come and help us with socials. And then Veronica, she and I have been friends for years now, and she is just one of my favorite people. She is so funny, and I wish she could do this more. I know she, comes as much as she can, but she is just my favorite person to sit there and talk to, and I think she brings such a good energy, and I love having her on. And basically, these are all my friends, and it's a project that, they have unique gifts that I think really help make this show what it is. And so that's how we kind of all came together, is just through this little circle that I have at the moment.
Yeah, I thought of a funny little story. I remember me and Ryan at a past job we had living in in Albuquerque, kind of just going for a walk on one of my lunch breaks, and ran into Ryan and a couple of other of our coworkers, and he just looks at me and he says, "What's your favorite song off the new Drake project?" And I
Oh
think at the
shit.
time
More
it
life.
was More Life had just come out,
Yeah.
and I guess you guys were like having a conversation, and then you were kind of just like, real quick, first first thing that comes to your mind, what's your favorite song off the new Drake project? And I can't remember what I said, but I remember it was like, I just remember it being such a long album that I probably hadn't even really given all of my time and attention to like all of these songs. And whatever I said, I remember you kind of like made a face and you're like, "No, it's all about this one song." I think you said it was all about Sacrifices, like the
Mm.
one with Young Thug and Two Chains. But then I remember like going back and listening to that one because I hadn't really given it a lot of attention, and then that ended up being like one of my favorite Drake songs in general. So I just think it's funny how these conversations kind of you get your friend's opinion on it, and you trust their opinion, and you know what they're into, and you kind of understand their taste. I think in a lot of ways it makes you understand certain things a little bit more, or it maybe
Mm.
gives you a little bit more of a reason to give it the time of day. But yeah, that was I remember just kind of one of the first conversations that we ever had kind of in that vein where, it's kind of just like the barbershop, like, give me your Mount Rushmore of hip hop, like kind of conversation.
Dang. No, that's kind of crazy because I don't remember this interaction, but it also doesn't surprise me because I do this shit all the time. But, and speaking of More Life, I think that's the best Drake project. Like, no, hands down for me. Like, I mean, technically, of course, like, there are, his first few records, like Take Care and all of those records, are incredible. But for me, I think like he kind of hit the epitome of, maybe not the epitome, but I'd say like the peak of just being proficient across from top to bottom, right? Because he has fucking bars on that record. There are moments that are just like vibe, from Passion Fruit to the like Get It Together and Mobita Rhythm stuff, like to the things like with Sampha and Guile Chester, and like all the stuff on that record is just like sick. And then like Fake Love and stuff like that, like his hits are on that one too. So as long as it is like, I think that project, because he doesn't even acknowledge it as a full record, like I think he like refers to it as like a playlist or something like that, but it's like, so I think it's his best work. And yeah, anyway.
That's interesting. I feel like that may be like a little bit of a like an unpopular opinion, even though I totally agree. And I think it was, I mean, I agree that there's so much to love about that project. There's so many songs that are just like, quintessential Drake songs. Like,
Mm-hmm.
first thing that comes to mind, obviously, is something like Passion Fruit, where
Yeah.
it's like, I remember everybody talking about that song, like when it first came out, and it being just the song that it is. And, but yeah, I mean, I would agree. If it's not like my favorite Drake project, then it's definitely, you know, top three or something like that.
You know what? Fuck it. This hasn't. This I did not think we were gonna get to Drake in this conversation, but
We
let's
always have to talk about Drake.
let's listen to a bit of Passion Fruit.
Hold on, fuck that.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. This one actually comes from Lane. Lane, who was on the show, she's asking, how do I feel, or how do we feel about the new Billie Eilish tunes? Billie Eilish is coming out with a new record this year. I think it's heavily anticipated for more reasons than one. One, because she just dominated with her first record, winning, tons of Grammys with it. And then following up with that with all these singles like Everything I Wanted last year, which won Song of the Year, I believe. So she's just had nonstop bangers after bangers and smashes. And so, yeah, of course, this new record is heavily anticipated. But Lane, to answer your question about how I feel about the new Billie Eilish songs, I would say I am in a wait to see kind of a perspective. I think it's similar to kind of how I felt with her on the first record. She had the song Come Out and Play that was playing on the like Apple commercials. And I thought it was like so beautiful. And I was so ready for what she was doing. And then some of the other singles that came out, I wasn't so sure about how I felt. But once I heard the whole project from beginning to end, it just all made sense to me. And I was like, oh shit, this project as a whole is speaking to me. And I kind of feel the same about this. And we'll kind of get into some of these tracks here specifically because I'm interested to hear your opinion, Daniel. But, the first thing that came to mind is like My Future on this of her new singles feels super solid to me. And there's some of the others that I have some mixed opinions on. But what do you think about these first Billie Eilish tunes that have come out so far?
For one, the first one that I heard was Lost Cause. And I just remember thinking, this sounds, it gave me like the feeling as if it was like the artist that came to mind, or like the best comparison I could probably make is something like a Janis Joplin kind of like smoky bar, just kind of like a laid back rock tune, soft rock tune. And I couldn't really get that out of my head. I'm not sure if there's a video for that one. I'll have to check it out to kind of see like what their visual interpretation of it was. But I remember feeling like, I think, and then the first thing I thought too was like, oh, it's got to be produced by Jack Antonoff, just because I felt like it was that kind of like organic, or maybe not necessarily like organic isn't the word I'm looking for, like live instrumentation. I feel like that wasn't really what I expected from like a new Billie Eilish song, and I think it still maintains her overall aesthetic from like the past few projects, but I think that one really stood out to me just for sounding unique in her discography thus far.
Yeah. What's interesting, you kind of said something that I've had as like a hot take for a long time. Maybe it's not that hot of a take, but what's interesting to me is, and it's been especially prevalent ever since watching the documentary that just came out with her on Apple. And it's very clear that I think her and her brother Phineas are such a team that this Billie Eilish record and records and everything that is Billie Eilish is a package, right? There's Billie Eilish, the individual, but then there's the artist Billie Eilish that I think is a composite of two of them. And I think Billie's not Billie without Phineas, and Billie's also not Billie without, being who she is as a performer. And what's interesting to me is that, like, I think as a pure performer, she's very Tony Bennett, Billie Holiday type of sound. And so when you said like a lounge act, smoke-filled bar, like I hear that so much in My Future, where it sounds like so much like a old lounge act on a cruise ship in some ways. And that's not disparaging the song, because My Future is probably my favorite one that's come out thus far. But just the way she performs is very, I'm an old jazz singer type of approach to things. There's so much modern production that make it not that. She's not a crooner. But there are aspects of the way she performs that it's just very, like, I wonder what it would be like without the Phineas production, or if she was to do like a jazz album or something like that, because she just kills that type of performance style. So I hear it on those two songs, like you said, on Lost Cause, but then on also My Future, having that type of persona. What's interesting, though, is you asked about, does she have a video? And she's gotten so much heat on the video for Lost Cause because of kind of at least her fans, or not even necessary fans, but the public is kind of accusing her of queer baiting, because she had like posted something saying, I love girls, and this whole video is about kind of like slumber party vibes with her and a bunch of her girlfriends. And then
Oh, interesting.
came out after, and there's a lot of controversy that I'm not fully versed in to be able to speak on, but she got a lot of heat for potentially, queer baiting. And so when you said, I don't even know if there's a video for this, it's funny because
there's this whole shitstorm going on about it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever really, at least I'll admit it's been a while since I listened to since I've been listening to Billie Eilish, because I really did like the what I think was the debut record was When We All Fall Asleep.
Where do we go?
Now that I think about it, I do realize that I had the same thoughts, like specifically the song Zanny. Yeah, that kind of cabaret style, very, very cool, jazzy vocal with like industrial, 808s and like very abrasive production. So now that I think about it, I realize that it's always been there,
Mm-hmm.
and I did always kind of pick up on that. I think that she goes maybe just a little bit more throwback on Lost Cause, and that was the one that really stood out to me. But I agree too with My Future. I think Your Power also, that one surprised me.
Yeah,
because it still had that kind of throwback, more so like kind of an old school pop sound, but then there was also like little hints of like production that didn't exist back then, that they couldn't do, like very, very deep sub bass and
yeah.
percussion flourishes that made it a little bit different. So, but I'll have to go check out that video. Yeah, I was not aware of the I'm not sure, controversy.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
I may be using that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, there's some really cool videos she has. So, like, the NDA video she's doing is, like, fucking crazy. She's, like, walking down a highway, and there's, like, cars zigzagging all in front of her and around her as she's walking through this highway. And, like, when I first watched it, I was like, from a production perspective, this has to be, like, maybe slow-mo and they sped up the video or something like that. But then her mom on, like, Instagram posted, like, a video of them shooting it, and these cars were going like 50 miles an hour around her, and it looked like terrifying. So check out the NDA video as well, because like there's just such cool stuff going on with that. But yeah, I think the bigger point that I think we're kind of both touching on a little bit is like what she's doing from an artistic perspective. But what I'm really excited about with this record is I had mentioned that there is Phineas has such a big element on, or such is really important to the art that they're producing. But with these first songs, I'm kind of getting glimpses that we're seeing Billie peek through a little bit. I think with Your Power specifically and NDA, there's like messaging here and lyricism that is, I think, her trying to speak, right? Coming of age of sorts and being in a situation where I have things I want to say. And more so than, I think Phineas historically, and in the documentary, it's even alluded to that Phineas writes 90% of the songs, and Billie doesn't even, or at that time when they were doing the documentary, didn't even really like writing songs very much, and was just like, Phineas is just so good at it, like, and she was the performer. But I'm hearing more of her in this, and I think that's why we're also probably seeing a difference in terms of what the first two records had. So yeah, I'm really just interested to see where this goes. So Lane, I will answer your question again by saying I am waiting to see, because I think there's a lot of potential for, as a full project, a lot of these pieces that feel a little bit disjointed at the moment to kind of connect. As in terms of favorites, I really like My Future from a performance perspective, and I like Therefore I Am. I think that one really grooves really hard. But for the most part, I think almost everything that they produce is going to be good. But I'm just curious to kind of see what the full project was. So before we get into the next question, let's listen to a little bit of My Future, because I've been talking about it so much.
I can't seem to focus, and you don't seem to notice I'm not here. I'm just a mirror. You check your complexion to find your reflections all alone. I had to go. Can't you hear me? I'm not coming home. Do you understand? I've changed my plans, 'cause I'm in love with my future. Can't wait to meet her.
Moving on. Next question. This question comes from Caitlin. Caitlin, I'm not sure I know who you are, so thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate the time that you're taking to listen to the show, and I hope you keep listening and keep sending questions because we'd love to hear from you some more. But Caitlin asks, have you guys seen Black Widow? And if so, what do you think? Daniel, have you seen Black Widow?
I've not seen it yet.
Oh, no. Well, Caitlin, I will not disappoint you. I have seen Black Widow. I do think it is incredible. Florence Pugh is stealing the show. I think so for the audience, if you don't know, Florence Pugh plays a particular character. This will be spoiler free for everyone, including Daniel, who hasn't seen it, and all of you who haven't seen it. But she is known for leading in the film Midsommar that came out, the Ari Aster film. And she's also been in Little Women. She was in a movie called, I'm going to cut this in because I don't remember what it is. I think All in the Family, where she plays a pro wrestler. She is a phenomenal actress, and I think she totally steals the show and this new one as well. But Black Widow was phenomenal. All of the characters on the side are just great. David Arbor from Stranger Things also has moments where he steals the show. And Scarlett is just a phenomenal actress as well. So I'm trying to be as spoiler-free as possible. I think Marvel always does a really great job, but particularly with this one, what I think is interesting is it was a prequel of sorts, and they had to do a good job of kind of having this be standalone, but I think they do so while also weaving it into the story that's currently happening and not making it so that is a prequel and disconnected. So it is very much an origin story, also interweaving with, we're not going too far back that it feels disconnected from where we are today in the Marvel storyline. And so I was really impressed with it. Go see it if you haven't. Yeah, and thank you so much, Caitlin, for writing in. I'd be interested to hear what you think about Black Widow and what you saw it. So feel free to send us an email or a message on Instagram so you can let us know what you thought.
Yeah, that definitely makes me more curious to see it. I mean, admittedly, I'm very much of like I didn't grow up reading comics a lot. I did eventually like get more into specifically like the Marvel universe as I got older. So I pay a lot of attention to like the more well-known, I guess, Marvel figures like Daredevil and Spider-Man, Thor. So I think Black Widow a little bit was not like, I was like, I don't really know if I'm like stoked to watch this one as much as I would be with the others. But I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, Ryan, that there is, I mean, I will agree that I think Marvel always does a really good job with stories, specifically everything that they've done with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
I think that the stories have a good way of connecting to one another, but also telling a standalone story. So I'm definitely, excited to see it. I think I'll definitely have to check it out sooner rather than later.
Yes, definitely do. I can't recommend it enough. I think it was also, at least for me particularly, a really good movie to go back to the movies for. I think, with COVID, of course, I love movies. I grew up on movies, going to the movies with my dad and my grandma and my mom, and like everyone in my family loves movies. So I love the theater and the theater experience. And so if you also love those things, I heavily recommend go back, assuming everything is safe, maybe you've been vaccinated, maybe you haven't, but if you feel comfortable going to the movies, go to the movies. I think it's an excellent first film back if you haven't been back to the movies yet.
Considering the finale
Mm.
of, years and years of movies that was Endgame,
Mm-hmm.
does this movie in particular make you excited for what's to come next?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
without saying too much, I would say yes. I think that's why I was kind of alluding to the fact that as much as it is standalone, it also very much is continuing to tell the larger story, which I think is great.
Mm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited.
All right. Well, we wanted to keep this episode a little bit shorter, so we'll go ahead and move in the last question. Before we go into this last question, though, here, I want to say one of the questions that we got most frequently is, Ryan, what's on your pop 5 and what's on your guys' pop 5s? I promise we will get to that. We'll have some standalone episodes to sit with Daniel and talk about his pop 5 and his experience, and same thing with Veronica, Brianna, etc. So I'm not ignoring that question. It's just something that we will eventually get to. And also, before we kind of transition into these last questions, I do want to close out on this last one. But please continue to send us emails with any questions you have or things that you want to talk about. We'll try to do our best to work these into shows, even if there is a guest. If you guys like this type of format where we can kind of get together and talk to you directly, please let us know that as well. We can try to work that into a schedule a little bit more to spend more time doing these type of things. But yeah, really looking forward to do that. If you want to follow us and to know where you can ask these types of questions or where you can send this, follow us on Instagram at MyPop5. You can also follow us on TikTok as of today at MyPop5, Twitter at MyPop5. We have a Facebook page as well. I will say, to be completely transparent, we have only really developed Instagram this far. It's going to take us some time to kind of build out those other social platforms, but that's something we very much are intending to do. And lastly, if you're traditional and you want to send us an email, we do have an email address. It's my name, Ryan, Ryan, at mypop5.com. And you can send us any sort of email there. And we look forward to hearing from you. But we're going to close today. This question comes from Alina. Alina asks, what are your top 5 songs currently? And what we're going to do here today, we're going to take some turns. Daniel and I are going to kind of just read through a list of the songs that we have currently that are our top 5 songs at the moment. We'll listen to a few of them, send you on your way. We won't listen to all of them because that would be 10 songs, and we won't probably talk about all of them, but I'd love to kind of give a list. So, Daniel, why don't you start? What is the list of your 5 songs that are currently at the top of your rotation at the moment?
First song I really have been into is Lemonhead by Tyler the Creator featuring 42 Doug off of his newest project. There is a new project coming out by the band Deaf Heaven. Their first single is Great Massive Color. There is a new project by Vince Staples that just came out. The lead single on that one is Law of Averages that I've really been into. I've been listening a lot to our last guest, Dean, Early Internet. His single Blankets is a phenomenal song. And also a song that is not so new, but that I've been listening to a lot is Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. I recently heard it in a friend's car, and it made me feel feelings that I had never felt before. And I was like, wow, this is really cool.
That's
and
awesome.
had to add that. So been listening to those a lot.
Yeah, when Alina sent this question in, I felt very pressured to say what's new and hip and how can I, stay on top of what's new. But sometimes I love the fact that when we're talking about top 5 songs at the moment, it's not to say what are your top 5 new songs, but if you're listening to an old school Earth, Wind, and Fire tune at the moment, that could also be in that list. But what I was interested in on your list here, and I'd like to hear you speak on it a little bit more, when we did our last Our Pop 5, really wanted to talk about Deaf Heaven. And so I'm curious, tell me about that song. Why do you think, you resonate with it so much? And yeah, speak on it.
Okay, so Deaf Heaven really made waves. I first heard of them back in the early 2010s. I think it was like 2013. They released an album called Sunbather. And I remember it just being this critical darling metal album. And I remember seeing it everywhere. And the appeal of it was that it had elements of indie rock and shoegaze, lighter rock elements, but also having the aggression and even the vocals of black metal, like shouty vocals, screams, over top indie rock, post rock type of pretty guitar soundscapes. So that was a moment that I remember very much in my life where I had kind of experienced this blending of genres that on paper I had no idea how it would sound. And then going into it and listening to the album like instantly became one of my favorite albums ever. With this new song that just came out a few weeks ago, they just went full on shoegaze, full on indie rock. The vocalist is now, singing. It has more of a traditional song structure. I think it was so unexpected. I don't know, it just hit me in a different way. I think it's something that is a little bit more accessible, which I love. I mean, I love songs that, can be sung along to, and they're not like 10 minutes long, going through all of these different like movements and phases. They're doing something really interesting. So the new album comes out August 20th, which is my birthday actually. So I'm very excited. And I'm going to see them in Santa Fe because they're playing at Meow Wolf, the art museum out in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So
When is that show?
it's in 2022.
Cool. Let's listen to a bit.
Quiet as a cradle, I laid in the middle, that drift spinning, hissed at the moon, conjured up the flowers to fix my impression of the gloom.
Sick. That was a lot more melodic than I expected.
The first time I heard it, I was like thinking that his vocals they reminded me a lot of Morrissey, like from the Smiths.
Yes, very Morrissey.
And,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. But also, yeah, and I was like, did they get a new vocalist? Like, I was so confused because, at least to my knowledge, I don't think he's ever, performed like clean sung vocals on any of their records. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just amazing. I think of also just like to think of the musicianship, was always there. He probably always loved to sing, and then was finally like maybe comfortable enough to sing on a record, or maybe they just felt like that's the direction they wanted to go, and he was like, I'm up for the task. That's something that I think is that I'm curious about. But yeah,
Cool.
great track.
All right, so one more time. Daniel's songs are Tyler the Creator's Lemonhead, Def Heaven's Great Massive Color, Vince Staples' Law of Averages, Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill, and Dean, Early Internet Blankets. Mine, I will go ahead and list off my 5 songs currently. A little bit of a mixture. The first one is Faye Webster. She just released a new record, and the song that I really love on there is called I Know I'm Funny, Haha. There is a song by an incredible jazz guitarist here in the Los Angeles area. She plays guitar for Jason Mraz's band, but she just released a new song with her jazz trio called Whenever You Call. I really love that tune. There is a new album by the band The Marias. They have a song called Heavy, which was shown to me by Morgan, who has been referenced on the show quite a bit. But yeah, that record is incredible, and Heavy is a melody that will totally stick with you. Next one I have is Lucy Dacus. Lucy Dacus is an incredible singer-songwriter. She is 1/3 of Boy Genius, who kind of took Storm. That is the trio of Phoebe Bridgers, Julian Baker, and Lucy Dacus. And she also had an incredible record that came out back in 2018, which at that time when I made my album of the year list was my album of the year. Historian is the name of that record. Phenomenal. But her next record just came out, and Brando is a song on there that I am absolutely in love with. And the last one, similarly, I wanted to have an old song that was kind of on my rotation, and I have a bit of a story about that one that I'll get into, but that is called Beautiful World by Colin Hay. Now, what I want to kind of speak on a little bit more is the Lucy Dacus tune, and this is for you, Daniel, since you're here on the call with me, but also for Alina. I know she was asking about our top favorite songs. And so the Lucy Dacus tune, I love it so much. One, I'm such a huge fan of her work, and I was also kind of waiting with bated breath in terms of what her new record was going to be like. And when I heard this song, it just felt both fresh and like Lucy Dacus of old. She is so unique in terms of her composition and lyricism that it's always something that I wish I could have written. She has a line at the end of her biggest song called Night Shift that says, "In 5 years, these songs will feel like covers dedicated to new lovers." And it's like something that was like, it sounds so simple and I can't believe it hasn't been written before. But when you hear it, you're just like, I get that, like in 5 years, I hope these songs feel like covers. That's what it is, actually. In 5 years, I hope these songs feel like covers dedicated to new lovers. So, you write a song about someone who you love and you hope just that later it just feels like it's not as visceral of a reaction. And she kind of does something similar in this Brando tune. The line is, "You called me cerebral and I didn't know what you meant, but now I do. Would it have killed you to call me pretty instead?" And, like little things like that where I'm just like, gosh, it hurts you, but it's also like so relatable in terms of like little interactions. And she is just so gifted at what she does. And her band is killer. And there's so many cool textures on this tune. And so let's listen to a little bit of that one.
You told me to skip school to go with you to the movies. You knew you were uncool, but you thought you could fool me. They play oldies in the afternoon for the elderly, and me and you, Fred and Ginger, black and white. I watch you watch, it's a wonderful life. Called me cerebral, I didn't know what you meant, but now I do. Would it have killed you to call me pretty instead? I'm in a second story window and you're yelling at me, Stella, and I'm laughing cause you think you're Brando, but you'll never come close. All I need for you to admit is that you never knew me like you thought you did. You never knew me like you thought you did, like you thought you did.
Yeah, so that's Lucy Dacus. It's an incredible record. Please go check it out. If for whatever reason you fall in love with this record, go also check out Historian, because it is one of my favorite records of all time.
Will do.
That was for the audience, but thanks, Daniel. I appreciate it. Last thing before we go, I'll send us out on this song. Before we go, I do want to say thank you again to the audience. We are so thankful again for all the support thus far. Seeing the download numbers skyrocket and the reviews that you guys are leaving, it's been such an amazing thing to watch, and we are truly so appreciative. So I'll send you all out on this last tune I grew up such a huge fan of Scrubs, the TV show, and honestly, the soundtrack to Scrubs is probably one of the best in television. That's obviously biased because I love the show so much, but I think they got a lot of acclaim for featuring indie music on national TV shows, and very frequently they would feature songs by Colin Hay, who was one half of the old 80s group Men at Work. But this one is such a beautiful song. I came across this. I don't remember if this song actually played in Scrubs. I'll have to go back and look again. I think it might have, but either way, I found this song because I heard at least another one of his tunes on Scrubs. And I just love this song, Beautiful World by Colin Hay. So I'll send you all out on this tune. Thank you so much for listening. Follow us again on all socials at MyPop5. We can't wait to hear from you again. And until then, until we hear from you, please let us know what's your Pop 5. Bye, everyone.
See you guys.
My, it's a beautiful world. I like swimming in the sea. I like to go out beyond the wide breakers, where a man can still be free, or a woman if you are one. I like swimming in the sea. My, it's a beautiful world. I like drinking Irish tea, with a little bit of lapsang souchong. I like making my own tea. My, it's a beautiful world. I like driving in my car. I roll the top down, sometimes I travel quite far. Drive to the ocean, stare up at the stars. I like driving in my car. All around is anger, automatic guns. It's death in large numbers, no respect for women.